Hi everyone, today I'm going to be filming what will hopefully be the first video in a little series on my channel where I look at my books that I once classed as my favourites and see if I would still consider them to be so. I first had this idea when I recently added a book to my favourite shelf on Goodreads and noticed that the little number where it says how many books are on that shelf was 46, which to me seems like a lot of books to consider my favourites, especially when off the top of my head I can probably think of like 5 or 6 that I would consider to be my all-round all-time favourites. To me, a favourite book is either something that really stands the test of time, something that I can return to again and again and again and just love every single time. And occasionally I will also consider things to be favourites if they had such a profound impact on me at one point in my life and I'm like sentimental about them. Even if I don't reread them and feel the same way that I once did, I would possibly still consider it to be a favourite because of the impact it had on me when I originally read it. However, even with these two categories, 46 books still feels like a lot, and I feel like there are going to be a lot of things on the shelf that I just added because I really enjoyed it at the time and it wouldn't really fit into either of these two categories. So I thought it would be fun to make a little series out of this. So in today's video I'm going to look through the whole shelf for the first time in ages. Hopefully I'm going to get rid of some of the books from the shelf today because I'm sure that there are going to be several that I just know I do not consider to be a favourite, and then hopefully we'll be left with a mix of things that I know for definite are favourite books and ones that I want to reread to really see if they stand that test of time and if I would still consider them to be a favourite. And then the other videos in this series will be me having reread those books, maybe some reading vlogs and talking about whether they are still my favourites or not, and then seeing what number we get down to. Does that make sense? Hopefully it will make sense as we start going along. So in terms of looking at the Goodreads shelf today, I've been on Goodreads since I think 2014 is when I started like actively recording every single book that I read. So it's only going to be books that I've read since then that are on there. But some predictions in terms of what I think will be on there. I think definitely The Book Thief, because that's my favourite book of all time. The Bell Jar and Rebecca will be on there. Also, I think there will be a lot of books about mental health because I went through a real phase in 2014, 2015 where I read a lot of mental health books. I think at that point I was so just happy to see any sort of representation that I didn't really look critically at things, and that doesn't just go for mental health, that goes for other things as well. And I think that if there was representation, then I was like, yeah, 5 stars, we love to see it, and I probably would put it on my favourite shelf because of that. So I'd be interested in rereading some of those books to see whether the mental health / other representation is actually good. I also think there's going to be a lot of YA books on here because I read pretty much solely YA during that time as well. If you were here with me on BookTube in like 2016, that sort of era, I'm sure you'll be expecting Holly Bourne, Sarah Bernard, those two mainly. Those are the authors that I went on about all the time, and I'm sure they're going to be on here, and I'm thinking that they will be like the first ones that I end up rereading. Okay, so at the bottom here I've got Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson, and just above that I've also got Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson. As I said, there's going to be a lot of mental health books on this list, I'm sure. I would be interested in keeping these on the list for now and rereading them because I know these meant a lot to me when I first read them. I think Winter Girls is about eating disorders and Speak is about sexual assault, I think, or PTSD. I can't really remember for sure. But I am interested to see what the representation in these is like. I know that they were written a really long time ago. In between those two is It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini. Again, it's another quite old mental health book, but it's one that I remember really enjoying at the time. So it's one that I'm going to keep on the list for now and hopefully reread at some point. Above that we've got The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, which is my favourite book of all time, and I feel pretty confident in saying that because I have reread it multiple times, so I feel like I know that it is. On a similar note, above that is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is one that I always say is one of my all-time favourite books for sort of the reason that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where it had like such a big impact on me when I first read it. I'm very sentimental about it. My Heart and Other Black Holes by Jasmine Waga was again one of the first mental health books that I ever read. I feel like possibly this one can come off the list. I read it pretty soon after I read All the Right Places, which I'm really surprised isn't here unless it's further up because I loved that book at the time, but that's definitely one that now I have very like mixed feelings about, because I feel like I wouldn't like it if I reread it. I feel kind of similar about My Heart and Other Black Holes. I am gonna leave it on here for now and add it to the list of things to reread. I'm not doing very good at getting rid of things, am I? None of the Above by I.W. Gregorio is about a girl who finds out that she's intersex, and I feel like I just added it to this list of favourites because I was like, oh, that representation is important, which it is, but I really, thinking back to it, I don't think I actually enjoyed the reading experience of it that much, so this is going to be one that I remove from the list. Next is Paperweight by Meg Haston, which I just remember loving so much, and I feel like kind of nervous about rereading this one. I think this will probably be one of the ones that I reread first because I'm really interested to see what I think of it. Every Last Word by Tamara Island Stone is again about mental health. I'm not sure what this is about. Oh, Paperweight is about eating disorders, by the way. You know what, I'm going to take it off the list because if I can't even remember what it's about, it clearly didn't make a good enough impact on me to deserve a place on here. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I'm not sure why this is on here because it's not even my favourite book in the series. Not that I really know what that is because I've only read them once all the way through. I think I'm going to take it off the list, you know. I don't think I'm going to be rereading Harry Potter anytime soon anyway. So yeah, let's just take it off. Fire with Fire, book 2 in the Burn for Burn trilogy. I loved this trilogy when I read it, and this was the best one in it, but I think I'm going to take it off the list because it's not something that I've ever thought, oh yeah, I would really like to reread that. Dangerous Girls by Abigail Haas. I loved this so much. As I say there, that ending, that is the thing that worries me about rereading it, is I already know what happens. I guess it will be interesting to read it knowing what happens because I can see how like clues and hints and things were dropped in here. I think it's one that deserves a reread and a chance to stay on the list, so I'm going to keep it. Solitaire by Alice Oseman. I'm going to take off the list because it's not my favourite Alice Oseman book. In fact, it's my least favourite Alice Oseman book. And I didn't even give it 5 stars. I think I gave it 4, although probably now compared to the others I would give it 3 because my favourite is Radio Silence and I gave that 5 stars, and I think I've given other ones 4 and this one is like bottom of the tier. So yeah, I'm going to take that one off. Hollyborn. I knew Hollyborn was going to be on here, so I've got Am I Normal Yet and How Hard Can Love Be, and I wouldn't be surprised if the third one in the trilogy is further up as well. I'm going to keep these on here for now. These are 2, or at least the first one. These are some that I definitely wanted to reread, although I am very nervous about doing so, as with Paperweight, because I just loved these books with my whole entire heart when I first read them, and I'm just scared, but it has to be done. Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This is my favourite Alice Oseman book, so I'm going to keep it on the list. I would be really excited to reread that. That's one that I'm not scared about because I think with things like the Spinster Club, I'm going to pick up on a lot of faults, which is obviously important because it's good to be critical about books, even things that you love or once loved. But I feel like Alice Oseman is a safe choice and I will definitely love that book rereading it. These Shallow Graves by Jennifer Donnelly was a mystery set in I think the 1920s, and I was really surprised when I loved that. I'm going to keep it on here because I would love to reread it and see if I still feel the same about it. Cress by Marissa Meyer. I think I'm going to take this one off. It's definitely my favourite in the Lunar Chronicles, but I wouldn't consider the Lunar Chronicles to be a series that I love. I really like it and it's probably one of my favourite series, but that's only because I haven't read that many series and I still haven't read Winter, so yeah. If I loved it that much I would have finished the flipping series by now. Paper Butterflies by Lisa Heathfield. I'm going to take off the list. I think it's about a girl who, you know what, I can't remember. I really can't remember. I feel like this coming on now is the stage in my life where I literally added anything that I enjoyed to the favourites list, so I'm going to take that one off. The same with Lumberjanes. Like, I enjoyed it but I've never continued on with the series, so I think it can go off the favourites list. George by Alex Gino. I don't actually own this book, so I would have to get it out from the library to reread it. It's about a trans kid and that's all I remember about it, but I'm going to keep it on the list. I would be interested. I think it deserves a chance. What's the Girl Got to Do is the third book in the Spinster Club trilogy, so the same as the other 2. I already talked about like why it's on here and what my thoughts are on rereading it. Vendetta by Catherine Doyle. I loved this series, the Blood for Blood trilogy, so much when I read it, so I'm definitely going to keep this on here, and I I can't wait to reread it. I think I'm going to really enjoy it when I reread it, at least I hope so. Second Chance Summer by Morgan Matson. This is one that I'm really not sure about. I liked it a lot. It was my favourite Morgan Matson book that I've read. It was really sad, it made me cry, and I think that's why I included it, because it's not often, or at least it wasn't, I feel like I cry a lot more now, but it wasn't very often the books did that, so I'm gonna keep it on here tentatively. And Happy New Year, the like companion novel sort of to the Splinter Club trilogy after it had finished, I think I'm gonna take it off because I didn't love it as much as the original trilogy. So I enjoyed it because I liked seeing the characters again, but I don't think it deserves a place on my favourites of all time list. The Princess Saves Herself in this one, I don't really know why this is on here. I think it's because it was the first poetry sort of thing that I'd actually enjoyed, other than Ariel by Sylvia Plath, which I don't think is on here, so yeah, it can go. A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. I knew that she was going to be on here. I loved this so much. It's another one that I'm really scared to reread, and that's why I've never reread it, because I'm just scared that I won't like it as much as I did the first time. I'm scared that I'll find problems with it, but as I said with the Hollyborn books, I need to do it. I need to see. Inferno, again, the same as Vendetta. With some of these series, I think I would like to get it to a point where I just have my favourite one of the series on the list. The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli, I enjoyed when I read it, but it's never been one that I would think about. Like, I'm surprised that it's on here, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Truth or Dare by Non Pratt, again the same, like I enjoyed it, but I've never wanted to reread it. I wouldn't consider it to be a favourite, so that can go. Wing Jones, I'm going to keep on here and reread. I loved this book when I read it. I feel like I've said that so many times. I loved it. Obviously, I loved it because it's on the favourites list. Becoming Betty by Eleanor Wood. I remember being really surprised that I enjoyed this, but I cannot remember what it's about, and I don't think it should be on the list. Moxie by Jennifer Matthew is a feminist fiction book. I'm going to keep it on the list for a reread because I just want to see what it's like. Troublemakers by Catherine Barter is one that really interests me because I think I gave it a 4 stars, but then I added it to the favourites because I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and I remember it being very different to anything else that I'd ever seen in YA before. It was very political, I think about a girl finding her political voice, and there wasn't any sort of like relationship in it, which I remember really liking because so much of what I'd read at that time just centered around teenage relationships. So I'm going to keep it on here. I think I would be really interested in rereading it and seeing what I thought of it, especially now that I feel like I know a lot more about politics than I did when I first read it, and I've definitely developed my political opinions a lot more. Mafiosa, I've already talked about the Blood for Blood trilogy, so that's why that's on here. Invictus by Ryan Groudon. I think I'm going to take this off the list. I did really enjoy it. This was one that I did a big buddy read with some of my friends who went to Yalk with me, and I think I was just really pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it because it's set in like a spaceship. That sounds like everything that I wouldn't enjoy, so I think that's why I added it, but although I did enjoy it, it's not one that I would think of as a favourite. The Names They Gave Us by Emery Lord. I honestly can't remember what this is about. I'm sure I enjoyed it, but I think it can come off. Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I'm going to keep it on and give it a reread, I think. I'm not surprised to see Are We All Lemons and Snowflakes by Hollyborn on here because I think I remember feeling like it was the most relatable Hollyborn book that I'd ever read, but I feel like I forgot it pretty quickly because I do not know what it's about at all. So I think I'll keep it on here, but I probably won't read it like too close after reading the Spinster Club books, just to give myself a bit of a break. Sea of Strangers by Lang Leave is another poetry collection that I really enjoyed, but I don't enjoy poetry that much, so I don't think that it really deserves a spot on the favourites. Sorry. Beautiful Broken Things by Sarah Bernard. Again, similarly with A Quiet Kind of Thunder, I just hold such a special place in my heart for this book, and I think like whatever I thought of it on a reread, it would stay on the list regardless because of that. And then we get to the favourites that I've read pretty recently, so I'm not going to reread these ones anytime soon because I know that they're worthy of a place on this list, at least at the moment. But just quickly, we've got Catherine of Aragon, The True Queen, Six Tudor Queens Book 1 by Alison Weir, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, The Mercies by Kieran Millward Hargrave, Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, and then Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which I added after my reread of it. So those are the books on my favourites list that I've narrowed it down to. So how many have I got now? 1, 2, 3, 30. So I've got rid of 16 books off here, I think, which is a good start, and there are definitely some more that I think will come off once I've had a reread of them. So of that, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are ones that I know for definite are at least worthy of the place on here now. I'm sure in like 5 years time I can do this video again and be like, why are these books on here? So the other 25 books on the list are ones that I want to get round to rereading, or at least with the series I want to reread like the first one to begin with and see if they are still worthy of a place on the list. Now I've only read 26 books for the entirety of 2020, so I'm not saying that this is going to be a quick series, but hopefully over a period of time I can reassess these and maybe narrow the list down, or maybe just rediscover why I really love some of these books and why I added them to the list in the first place. So I've just had a little think, and I think I'm going to start out with 3 books to reread, and I'm going to pick the 3 that scare me the most. So let me just go and grab them and then I'll talk about them briefly. So these are the 3 that I think I'm going to start out by rereading. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get through them all really quickly. I think I flew through all of these the first time I read them in like a day, so hopefully I can do the same again. So first of all, we've got Am I Normal Yet by Holly Bourne, which, as I said, I used to rave about all the time. This was like an integral part of my personality for a good year or two. I think I'm particularly interested in the feminism in this book, and I think I will be able to be a lot more critical about it on a reread, because I hadn't really read many feminist books before I read this for the first time, and I also was a lot less educated than I am now. I'm sure that I'm gonna love the characters and the way that this story is told. I've read more Holly Bourne books since then, and I've always loved the way she writes characters and just the way she tells a story, but I think there will be things that I am able to comment on and things that I will let myself to be more critical of this time around. Next, we've got A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. I almost haven't wanted to reread it because I loved it so much and have held it on such a high pedestal for so long, but I think it's time. I really hope that I enjoy it again, but I don't really like reading romance, so I'm really surprised that I did enjoy this as much as I did. And finally, Paperweight by Meg Haston is about a girl who's in a treatment centre for eating disorders. I can't remember too much other than that, but I just remember this having such like a profound impact on me, and unless like I really hate it, I can't see myself wanting to remove it from the favourites list. But I'm not sure, there might be things in this that really don't sit well with me anymore. As with all of these, we'll just have to wait and see. So that was a look into my favourites list on Goodreads and a peek at 3 books that I want to get around to rereading soon, so I can continue on with this little series that I'm hopefully going to be doing on my channel. Let me know in the comments if any of the books in this video are also ones that you would consider to be your favourites, or just let me know your favourite book of all time. I would love to know. Other than that though, that is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!